Doctor reveals the wild history behind seed oils.
There was no such thing as a seed oil before 1870, and then it was first used as a machine lubricant. So they would grind up seeds and use the oil as a machine lubricant. It wasn't really popularized for human consumption until 1910, 1911 with Crisco. We have a story about Crisco we could tell later, but this was, I believe, they had this excess machine lubricant, and they were thinking like, oh, let's use this for human consumption. This will be great. It doesn't spoil as well. It's cheaper. It's lighter. And it didn't really catch on until I think the 1950s. And I'll tell that part of the story in a moment. But if you look at human health, and of course, 1910, 1900, 1870, 1890, not quite the same as we have now with medicine, but we had records, right? We pretty much knew what a heart attack was. And heart attacks were very rare. Diabetes, very rare. Obesity, very rare. There's photos from even 60 years ago, and we look at humans and they were much less fat than we are today. People post these photos on Instagram all the time. 1950s at the beach, 1960s at the beach. It's all skinny people. But even I'm sure if you wind back even further to the 1900s, early 1900s, we had a lot of skinny people. We didn't have a lot of massive, obese, overweight humans like we do today. We can get into those numbers. They're staggering. What the combination of obesity and overweight today is enormous. So there's a clear transition in the last 100 to 110 years. Seed oils really didn't exist before, let's just say late 1800s, and then introduced into the human supply chain early 1900s. Now, along with that, again, this is all correlation, so we have to be careful. We can only draw a hypothesis from this, which we must test, and we can go into all of the lines of evidence that make me very concerned about seed oils. But these are all just observational correlations. But with the introduction of seed oils from 1910, we see a steady rise in chronic illness. All of it tracks together, gradually increasing rates of obesity, gradually increasing rates of cancer, gradually increasing rates of heart disease, gradually increasing rates of diabetes. And the most significant data we have is probably in the last 50 years, and the trend has continued. But that trend goes all the way back to the early 1900s. Again, just correlation, but we can talk about why I think there's a really compelling hypothesis to be drawn from that. And then I think it was in the mid to early 1950s that I think it was President Lyndon Johnson had a heart attack. And at that point, people were asking it just captured the American imagination. And we thought, why did this hero, this paragon of our culture have a heart attack? And I think it almost took him out of office. My history's a little fuzzy there, but that was the beginning of the medical system and the American Heart Association and the American Medical Association beginning to vilify cholesterol, and then in connection with that, animal fats. That's the beginning of the problem.